Welcome to The Mystic Lens, a podcast by Current Collective Church where we explore the spiritual path through stories of transformation from real people in our community and explorations of Christian tradition through a mystic perspective. Our hope is that these conversations will help us feel even more connected to God, ourselves, and each other, inspiring us to live more expansively from the well of living water within. To learn more or connect with us further, visit thisiscurrent.org.
I heard the way you said great.
What?
I heard the way you said great. You got to get here. You got to get here.
I am.
For real, us legitimately just hanging out on the couch.
I really am.
Okay.
I'm just not used to a microphone in my hand. That's
I
all.
know, but I'm just telling you. I've been with you for more than half my life. And the way you said great, I know you're feeling a little on now.
Okay.
It's totally normal to feel on whenever there's a light over there and two cameras right there and microphones and an interface right there and everything's rolling. I understand.
I need a minute to
drop in.
Yes.
And that's totally fine.
Okay.
So this is a great intro already because I think some of the biggest intention of Current and just I think our story is, as cliche as it may be, authenticity, being real, not having any sort of smoke and mirrors. I mean, listen, the conversations that me and you have about seeing through people's bullshit, I think that should be like talked about even here and embodied, because that's been the big thing with any of the spaces that we've been in is like, and I want you to feel freedom to tell everybody how you really feel. Because, dude, the way you articulate, for those of you that are into this or not, some of you that may be from more of a Christian background, this may feel already a little obscure to you. But from an astrological perspective, Lindsey is an Aries. And that flame is totally okay to show up to help light up. That's what the flame does. It lights up something that's true. Sometimes in a very aggressive way. And I would love for people to be able to see some of that because I think it's important because the things that you bring up and like the values that you hold, I feel like there are values. Yeah. They're like, it's what we've developed together. And that's why I wanted you to be the very first episode.
Thanks.
So at this point of recording, we have a whole bunch of episodes already. I think, 8 or something already done.
I didn't realize that.
We've not released it yet because I wanted you to be the first one.
Thanks.
Because I think it's important that people learn a little bit of the origin story that we have, and that kind of sets the stage for all the other conversations that are going to be coming. So,
I agree.
That's a big ramble at the beginning here, but this is
good.
I love the long form vibe.
Yeah, I do too.
So, well, thanks for joining me in your own living room, Lindsey, that you decorated so beautifully.
Thank you.
That's one thing I get feedback about on all of my other videos. Yeah, people are like, how does it look so good in there? I'm like, because I'm married to a wife that makes it look awesome.
Thanks. You're sweet.
So how are you feeling?
I feel good.
Feel good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So what I would like to do is start with a little bit of origin, not complete origin, but I do think a little bit of backdrop for us. And then we don't have to get into like all the nitty gritty freaking details of like.
How far back are you talking here?
I know. And for people that don't know us and are just getting to know us, we can go really far back because we should just mention, or you tell the story of how long ago we met and how we know each other and our first date.
You always say that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You're such a storyteller. I think you should say it.
All right, we'll fill in some of the gaps. So, the year is, 1995. Granted,
yes.
I was born in 89. You were born in 90. So
5 years old.
5 years old. And my parents had recently moved back to Indianapolis from Miami, Florida. Mom and dad planted a church in Miami, Florida. That's where I was born. We came back to Indianapolis, but our families already knew each other.
Yeah.
Because the church that your family was involved in, specifically on your dad's side, was the church that my dad, when he got saved and got involved and felt the call to ministry, he became the associate pastor at that church.
Yeah.
So, and before he even got saved, he used to party with your aunts.
Yeah, yes.
So,
and like second cousins, like yes.
So we go
Very
way back,
entwined.
like we're talking like 70s parties back between our extended family, way before we were born.
Yeah.
And then, so when mom and dad and myself moved back to Indianapolis, my parents started a church. They reconnected again. You know, your parents started coming to my parents' church plant, and they took us to the circus together.
Yes.
When we were 5 years old.
And I remember you screaming.
Yeah.
I remember you wanting, that dang sword. I remember it very well because I was like, oh my gosh.
You know those like light up swords?
Yeah.
You know, for listeners, those light up swords that are at circuses and carnivals, and I was like throwing a fit
But you
because
were always loud. I remember you always, every time you talked.
Yes. Loud laugh.
Before your sister was born too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, before
Just
Valerie
you.
was born, just me. And but you had your older sister,
Yeah.
who that was always fun because she like provoked things.
Yeah.
and
Well, yeah.
such.
I told her I had a crush on you, and she told you.
Yep, I remember
was
that.
Devastating.
In the house your parents still live in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had that, and we still have a cup from that
Yeah.
circus as memorabilia, you know. And
Bailey.
but we didn't start dating then. Not to give you guys our own personal story, but just to give everyone a background. I joke sometimes at current services about how I've been with you for more than half my life, but then like I don't think people know like how far back some of this goes.
I know.
So then we didn't see each other for childhood, teenage years. You started coming back around the youth group. I started to show some interest, but then you stopped coming for a little bit, like 6 months. And then when you kind of resurfaced again, I told you happy birthday when you turned 17.
Yes.
And
And I was out
then
here in California.
You were in San Diego. I was in Indianapolis you were visiting your sister. And then when you came back, we started dating, and rest is history. And we just celebrated in April. I asked you to be my girlfriend in 2007.
7, yeah.
So how many years has that been now? We just celebrated it, but
18 years?
yeah, long time. 18 years,
Is that right?
right? Yeah, if I'm doing math off the top of my head. Yes,
Yeah.
18 years.
Okay.
So, and we're 35.
Crazy.
So, been together for a long time,
Yep.
been through a lot together. Got married at 20, and then we, that's whenever things started to move in a direction, because we got married when we were going to be going to Youth with a Mission, YWAM, in Orlando.
Which kind of came out of nowhere at that time.
Yeah, I was feeling that tug. You didn't want to go. You're a hairstylist.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm telling all this.
Yeah. No, I can.
But I didn't actually. This is the stuff that I actually
did we
didn't want to
want-
get into. But all right, let's skip ahead some,
Yes.
because I can get distracted on all
Yeah,
of that.
I agree. There's so much.
So much there. The point that I'm making is that we've been together through a lot.
Yeah.
And what I want to talk about origin story, specifically with this Mystic Lens podcast, is how we have reemerged maybe into following the call of facilitating space for a church environment, but in a refreshed and reimagined way.
Yeah.
And what I want to talk about a little bit specifically with you is your take on this whole development, probably from, when we, not only when we moved out here, but more so when we started this first in 2020,
Yeah.
and what that was like, and what has surfaced over these years, and what our intention is for the space, and what we want to hopefully impart to people through Current together. Because I feel like people, they know you and they see you, and they don't really get to like have your inside scoop on things as much. So I'm just going to kind of prompt some conversation, and then you just share.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like what keeps resurfacing is kind of when we kind of went more towards spirituality. I keep thinking about that time, actually, and which is pre-2020. It was when we were in apartment 7. I don't remember what year that was. 2018. 18.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we've had so many versions of ourselves and our vision for everything. And when we first moved out here, it was, I don't even think I had a vision or a prompting for what I wanted to see or contribute. It was more, I think I felt more supportive of you.
Yeah.
Initially,
you said that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just kind of along for the ride. And then when that failed, I mean, I don't want to say failed. That
failed's fine. I mean, whatever.
It's not really failed though, because it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
It wasn't a failure. Our eyes were opened. It was like another busting through for us, actually. So failure is not the right word, because it actually needed to happen. But I think I say that because I think you felt that initially until you were able to process through it all. But
right.
So there was that version, and then it was like everything, I guess, was kind of being torn apart for me, belief wise and everything. And then I felt like there was just so many times there was versions of us like wanting to start something, but it just never felt right. But it was like, well, what else is there? And but I remember when we moved from San Marcos to Carlsbad and we were up at apartment 7. That's why I keep pointing over there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's the same place, apartment complex. But that's when I felt opened up to spirituality. And I don't know if we want to talk about all that.
Yes,
but
I do. And keep going.
I don't know. That's just what was on
Whatever
my mind
you're selling,
today.
I'm buying. Yes.
That's when, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, were you working at that church at the time in Oceanside?
Not quite. Like when we first moved there, I was working at the underwriting spot, and then I moved over to the agency in Oceanside. And then but it was, whenever I changed over to the church, the progressive church in Oceanside, we moved down here.
Okay.
To apartment 1. Yeah.
Okay.
But that really opened up, I think, in apartment 7. And I think you're right. Like we had been, to use the pop culture term of deconstruction, that had happened even whenever we were moving out here, I feel like. Because I was.
For you, more so.
For me. And you felt very much, I mean, we had really young kids. You were in full mom mode.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
and dealing with depression, and I didn't even know it. I mean, I was not consumed with starting a community at all. No. I was just in the thick of being a new mom still. And
relocating across the country.
Yeah. And quit working at that time. And
no help, no family around. I mean, we had
6-month-old.
Some family, but not like in that kind of like, helpful, like you know what I mean, like helping raise the kids family, you know. So
yeah, we didn't have that like
great family
support.
Though. Here.
Yes. Oh yeah.
But we're talking to you, Angie and AJ. We miss you.
Yeah.
Come back. No.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, we got a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old, and I was navigating so much. But yeah, you were already starting deconstructing, and that was everything you were telling me. I'm like, right along with you. I'm like, I agree. I mean,
right. You were tracking, and I think.
Yeah.
I think what was happening is like, a lot of times it does start in the head. Like you start to unravel different ideas and concepts, and you start to rearrange a thing. But if you use the analogy of like the living room, if you're rearranging the living room, you're moving around all the pieces, you're throwing some shit away, you're putting some new stuff in, you're adjusting it all. But then there's the experience of sitting in the readjusted room and feeling the energy and the vibe of how that room has now been restructured. Mm-hmm. And I think that in 2018, whatever that was, in apartment 7, like we had been doing years of readjusting, and that was the first time that we started to really sit in the room of what it looked like at the beginning of what it looked like to have a different worldview, a different posture, a different theology, a different,
kind of like the dust had settled in a sense, because it was so kind of chaotic in a way, not knowing. I mean, we had so much. What do you have faith in at that point? It's you're not sure what you believe. And
right.
it's very interesting. But you're right. I think some consistency started happening.
Mm-hmm.
And things started to kind of slow down in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Which
in
is
terms
always
of needing it all to make sense.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
that kind of like went away too.
Rhythmic with some things. And because I think that always happens. I think there's chaos and then I think it settles. And then I think you go through another merging of chaos and then it settles and you have to sit with that. And those are the growth. I think that's the kind of death and rebirth in a sense, maybe. I don't know. But I feel like those are the changes you go through that kind of propel you forward. And I think it had settled. And I was dealing with a lot of anxiety for whatever reason. I still couldn't tell you fully why. It could have been my body. It could have been anything. I don't know. But that's when I felt really opened up spiritually. Mm-hmm. And it was a good thing. It wasn't, because I've experienced fear through spirituality too. And I don't, I grew up with very much like the dark side of spirituality, and like that was always to be avoided, and you don't know what to trust, and that when you think about spirituality sometimes, and if you don't have a foundation to ground you, it can feel so big and vast and scary,
Right. And that's where just like certainty and clarity through the idea of like, because you grew up very conservative, even Pentecostal influence.
Yeah.
And so there was a very much like a fear around anything that was not explicitly even not just Christian, but your version of Christian, so there was that. And
which actually is so funny to think back. I'm like, this was very, what is the word I used? Like, not woo woo. That's the only word that comes to mind, but like, what's another word for it? I've used it before to describe, it's like, we talk about, what was it? I don't know.
You're fine. Just start to talk about it. Like, what do you mean?
Like when you say something, this is going to happen. It almost sounds like.
Oh, yeah. Like the word of faith kind of stuff,
but
even?
It's
manifestation kind of?
Well, I mean, I grew up with like, don't do this because this will happen. It's
superstitious.
Superstitious, yes. It's funny because it was called spirituality, but it was very superstitious.
Right.
And that was always, and it messes with you, but you start to see it. It's like, oh, you're just superstitious and you don't even know it.
Right. It's under the guise of Jesus.
Yes.
So, but it doesn't make it superstition.
Language. Right.
Yeah,
it
totally.
makes it safe using it in terms of Christian language, but it's superstition at the end of the day.
Right. Yep. That's exactly what it is.
I don't know.
And so you started to get more opened up, I think experientially too, because you developed meditation practice and journaling and things.
Yeah.
But then like you said, like maybe we should talk a little bit about that, because that was trippy time. For those that are interested, we're rewatching the OA on Netflix. So some weird, trippy, transdimensional, whatever. But like we've had some experiences that are, and we were watching all those years ago, and that series just came out. You couldn't even finish the second.
No, I was dealing with anxiety.
Yes.
Like, I can't watch this. This is too much.
Because it was also a little too close to home for like what was really taking place and happening.
Yeah, because I was having these experiences at that time. And I know for some people that come from the Christian faith, it could sound almost in a negative sense, almost demonic, but I didn't have that sense that it was demonic. It was just trippy. I don't know. It didn't feel unsafe to me, but it did create a level of anxiousness and anxiety through these experiences I was having. But that was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was after that one day that we had I don't know if we want to go into that whole story. I don't know.
Talk about it. Yeah. This is fun.
Yeah. Okay.
Because that was a turning point.
That was the turning point. I think back to that day. That was when I felt opened up in the best way.
Same.
But it was, what's her name that I like?
Mel
Robinson. Yeah.
I think just Mel Robbins.
Mel Robbins?
Yeah, Mel Robbins. Okay, it's recording. Good.
Okay. Yeah, I think I was getting into spiritual practices more in my life, but then I saw one of her videos on Instagram, and it was funny because it was kind of a motivational post. It wasn't spiritual at all, but it was just a post from her that was sharing like something encouraging that
it had to do with visualization, I think, right?
Yeah, which was just like imagining your life and journaling, and I don't know, there was something to it that just something clicked when I saw that video. There was something inside of me that just felt so encouraged and inspired, and all these things I just lit up from that post. And was it the next morning? I think I opened a book and I decided I was going to start my day with this specific book. I wish I could remember the book. I have it all written down somewhere.
Was it a James Allen book?
It might have been.
Yeah.
It might have been. And he was talking about the angels, and it was this whole paragraph that just, I don't know, I read it and it was just powerful.
Yeah.
It really, like, I felt alive when I read that. I felt something deep, and it was like I lit up, like that feeling of the spirit, was touching me, and I hadn't experienced that in a long time.
Right. When you're so heady and trying to sort out theological things, you forget to like the sensation of the presence of the Holy Spirit.
Right.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was definitely lacking that too at that point.
Yeah. Everything was, and things were difficult in terms of like finances, and we had so much going on, little kids and just lots of things. And so it was just, I hadn't touched spirituality like that, and I hadn't felt so spiritually connected like that. And I don't know, I think I went on a run. I took the kids in the stroller and I went on a run on Coast Highway, and I was having this like spiritual experience the whole time I was running. And I felt like I was even sometimes having this like outside perspective of the people around me. And then, I don't know, I felt like I was like in and out of my body in a sense of like viewpoints and like energy, and just like, I don't know, it was just a full on spiritual run I was having. And like, I almost felt even like I was tuned in to the people around me. It was almost felt too much. It was like I was feeling people around me, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is, I mean, going from like no spirituality for a long time to like feeling the people around you was like a lot. And I don't know, there was just this like spiritual high I was on the whole day. Like I could not get away from this. And it's funny because I can have these experiences, but they kind of, they go like this, and it's
up and down for the listeners. Yeah.
Right. Yes. It goes up and down. And to be on that like an entire day and just feel bliss and just peace and love, and it was incredible. And then I remember you came home from work, and I was sharing with you about some of this.
Yeah.
And you were at the
I was working, and I was learning about, commercial insurance stuff, working at an agency. And, but at that time for me, I'd felt very over it all as well. Cause we'd tried to do some meditation groups that we hopefully had an intention that it would take off in some way in terms of like a church, or just all of these things. It just felt like dead end. And, we'd been out here for some years, and I just felt like, dude, like just over it. Like just supremely over it.
It was dry. We were dry.
Dry. And I remember just before that, and I've never been, and still am not like a super money motivated person. Like, and I remember thinking, like I'm just going to focus, I was making commission. Like I'm just going to focus in on just like earning commission. And I remember like, even my coworker at the time was like, dude, like you're in it. And I just was like, out of anger, just like, I'm just going to put aside all things, God, spirituality, like whatever. Didn't listen to any of the podcasts anymore. Turned up podcasts like annoying people like Grant Cardone and bullshit like that, whatever. And I just like went in, and I just did that for, I don't know, it was probably a couple months, and I just started to feel dry with that. But I was so jaded by the spirituality. Yes, by God. I felt betrayed even. I felt like,
I remember that.
Yeah, because I'm like, dude, I freaking sold everything. I moved away from family. I moved across the country, and nothing's happening. And something was really important that broke in that time too. And I want to get to the real like turning point of our story out here is I had realized that I had been seeking validation through, what would happen for me. And it was all external. Like I was doing this internal work thinking that somehow I should be, rewarded by coming to do what I moved out here to do.
It should be easy. The money should be there. The people should show up.
The people should show up. All the stuff.
I did the hard part. I moved.
And expectation on who the divine is and how the divine should show up based on my assumptions of how reality should be.
Which that was our mentality.
Well, yeah. And when you do come from the church circles that we come from, like, evidence of God's blessing on your life is when things are working right.
Yep.
Evidence that you're not living in God's blessing is things aren't working right. So I'm like, well, but my intuition is telling me that I'm living exactly in the center of what I'm supposed to do. But that external reality was not matching the internal reality. And I was over it. Yeah. Like deeply over it and mad and jaded and frustrated and even too, there's a separation between us because I was just like, even for a while, I'm like, well, maybe if Lindsey was more into this, if she could just, what I remember, I tried to start a space one time, and you were just like disinterested.
The
like,
one in Oceanside.
Yeah, you were definitely disinterested, and I just was like, whatever, I'm just gonna do this single-handedly, whatever. But there was a division between us in that because you just were so not interested. You never really. We'll get here, but you've never really been interested in doing, communal things in a church setting or whatever. You never, even when I was on staff at my dad's church, you never liked a small group. You never, you didn't want to volunteer. Like you didn't like none of the stuff that a quote unquote pastor's wife does. Like Lindsey's like, F that. Like
I don't want that title.
You've never been that way. Even back before we were even married and I was feeling this call to go to Youth with a Mission to do a discipleship training school, you're like, I don't want that life.
I know.
You've never wanted that.
I know.
And even moving out here, it was kind of like, I really think I sold you, like you really loved me and supported me. And I think you really wanted to live in San Diego. And like, so you did it.
Well, yes, but partially because I had a moment that I remember. As you know, there's a lot that I don't remember, but there was a time specifically when we were in Whiteland in our house.
Greenwood.
I know, I get embarrassed saying that was our town.
The welcome to Whiteland sign was in our backyard, basically. It was basically Greenwood. I don't like to tell people that I owned a home in Whiteland, Indiana, because it's just... for obvious reasons. Right. It was basically, and it was Greenwood. Yeah. Continue.
Okay. But I remember specifically, I was against coming out here because I wanted roots. We were started our family. Like I was like, I was working at a bank at the time, I think, right? Yeah. That's right. 'Cause I had Sophia, and I was like, why are we? I mean, I loved California. I was going to move to California before we even got married and were dating. Like, that was my plan. I love California, but I never thought about raising a family away from our roots. That was never a thought. But I'm also very, I love exploring and adventure. So, but I just remember a time specifically at the house when, I don't know, it just dropped in, like a desire to be here. Out of nowhere. It just dropped in and I was like, let's do it, but it had to, I just can't muster up something.
Right. It's got to be real.
So it has to start. And I know that sounds whatever because marriage is about give and take and you sacrifice for each other, but kind of. I have a hard time supporting unless I believe in something. I don't know why there's just such resistance there for me. And God, I think God knows what I need to be able to, and because it happened when we were engaged, and I was figuring out my life. I was going to be a stylist, and you were going to work. We didn't really know what you were going to do.
But I think we were starting to see that
the ministry was coming in, and I was like, it was this weird moment. Then even we're going to get married and I'm going to go with you to YWAM, even though I hated that thought so much.
We didn't even finish the thing, but
yeah, no.
it was a pivotal moment
I
for
was
sure. But
very much like, well, if you go, we're probably going to be nothing anymore when you come back. Like, this isn't going to even exist. So either we get married and we go together. Like, it's the only way this is going to work.
So we got married and spent all of our wedding money on tuition for a discipleship training school. I mean, dude,
story, but
we've been in it, man, since day one. But to come back to that moment in time in apartment 7, the apartment 7 moment, I just wanted to also fill in that, like, this was not a time that either of us, you in that within a 24-hour window of time, felt a spiritual heightened sensitivity. But before that, it was pretty dead in the water.
Both
for
of
me,
us.
it was dead in the water. Like,
marriage, everything
we
was
weren't
hard.
seeking anything. Yeah, we were disagreeing on stuff, had expectations of each other that weren't being met, like all sorts of things, little kids, and living away from family, and nothing seeming to be working out, and just feeling betrayed by God and the call and all of those things. And just, like there was that reality of not believing really anymore in anything.
Right, no faith really at that point. No, our expectations were never met in that time. We felt like they were never met.
And just frustration, like for me, like weeks, a couple months of just frustration and bitterness, honestly, a lot of bitterness. But I look back and I think, and I realize even in that moment, like after this happened, I realized like I was looking for, this is where this whole tangent came from, was like external confirmation of what internal was. And I do think that's valid, but it doesn't always show up because we don't know sometimes what we really need.
Yeah. We were so used to getting that in the church community, though. I mean, it's like me and you would show up at a conference somewhere and somebody would have a word for us.
Right.
There was always that. And
a prophetic word of knowledge for those that don't know. Yes.
That kept us like in faith, truthfully. Yes. But that's not always available, and it wasn't going to be because we were not a part of a community. We weren't attending church. We would try, but then we'd go 6 months later with nothing because it was just like, man, this is not it. But,
no church was it for us.
So we were lacking anybody speaking into our life. We were lacking in our marriage and financially and all. I mean, things were just kind of upside down. Yeah. Things were
not
very
sure
difficult.
where we're going career-wise. I'm like, why am I learning insurance? I freaking hate this stuff. Like, and it's all paid off in dividends. So let's just share go ahead.
So I guess anyway, so when you came home from work, I think I had made dinner. I was bringing it over to the table and I was like, I just want to tell you about my day. Like, it's been really interesting. I've had some experiences, and it was just like, I mean, I didn't really talk about stuff like that other than like if I was dealing with like anxiety or something, but it was like not that. It was something tangible but spiritual, it was. And I remember, I think I waited till the kids were done at the table and they were to play in the living room.
I remember seeing them in my head right now. They're playing in the living room.
Yeah, and we were sitting across from each other. You had the wall behind you, and I pulled the book. I was like, can I just read you what like really opened me up today? Like, I just want to read it to you and just hear it, And it was felt like, I felt like you could feel it in the room. There was a shift already, even just like we were both kind of open, I think, as well. And I don't know, I remember just reading it and I could feel like we were connected and felt spiritually. I don't know. It's hard to explain a little bit, but there was a little table stand, which I'm looking at it right now.
Yes.
It's bamboo. It's from, I don't know, I think the 70s. It was my grandma's. It was something passed down to me. And it was just this little side table. It's skinny, but it's got tiles on it. So it's kind of heavy, actually. It has tiles on top and then a lower level. But then the frame is bamboo. And it was like it was next to you. But there was space for you to get in and out. So you could sit down. And
I'd say about maybe 2-3 feet away from me.
Yeah. Because we had a plant on it. We had some things on it. There was like books.
It was decorated.
It was all decorated. Yeah.
Of course.
Right. Yeah. Look around.
We'll post a picture in the YouTube video of what it is. Yeah.
And I remember we were reading it, and I could feel you, and I felt me, and I felt Spirit again so strong. And it was like a moment. It was weird. I looked up at you, and as I was looking up, it was simultaneously happening, and it was the most bizarre thing I've ever experienced in my life.
Same.
Because time stopped, but yet it was moving, and I don't even know. I mean, it doesn't matter. But the table that was beside him had literally went from where it had been sitting to right next to him, and it was like I didn't see it disappear, but I saw it.
It just was there.
It was just there.
I mean,
there.
Not even a blink of an eye.
And I remember I said, "Oh my God." Like, I looked up at you and I was like, "Oh my God, the table." Like, you were like, it's like you already knew and you didn't even look at it, but you almost felt, like, I think you felt it, or you could see it from your peripheral.
Yes, but I didn't see it move. It
was
there. It's like divinity pressed pause in the cosmos for a moment.
Paused, and I've never felt time stop like
pause, that. But time, the timeline didn't pause. Like, it's eternity.
Yeah.
It's separate from time. And I remember even in that moment that you're talking about, like, my eyes are open. They're like, I'm conscious. We're after dinner having a conversation, like, dirty plates still in front of us, like everything's there. The kids are playing. And in this split second of a moment, it was just a knowing. Like, I explain it now sequentially, but the only way I can say it is it was everything all at once, whatever that movie was, everything all at once, whatever. Like, it just was there.
Yeah. There was no
break. I couldn't, it's hard to say I saw, but because it's a knowing out of the peripheral of my eye, it was like a glitch in time in the fabric of reality. And then this is all happening at once. And then I was over my kids in the living room, seeing them, seeing us, seeing even the front door of our apartment. And I was praying blessing over us. Like, the way I look at it is like, if you've ever seen Interstellar, the Tesseract at the very end, where Matthew McConaughey is pushing books to himself, trying to get himself to not go on the expedition. Like, I think it was myself and potentially some sort of Tesseract kingdom reality dimension that was like, in a moment of complete loss of hope and faith and trust and belief, it was like a praying of blessing and an anointing in that moment for a turning point for something going forward. And then again, all of this is happening at once in the split second of an eye. And then whenever I just come back, and I felt like I came back into my body, because it took me a second. I felt like separate from physical reality. And then
I saw it in your eyes.
Yes.
I remember seeing your face.
And that's what's great about this is this happened together. This is not just some sort of individual psychosis.
No.
Like, this happened together in a very normal way. No psychedelics, no nothing. This is just natural reality, even nihilistic natural reality. Like, I think nihilism was setting in pretty well. Like, and no, Donnie, these men are nihilists. But I really feel like something transcendental happened then, because I was trapped into my seat.
There was no way you could get up. You would have to move the thing to get out.
did.
I think you had 3 inches.
Not even. Like, it was right
so up against you.
And my back was to the wall, tables in front of me. You had to come over. We had to each lift up the table and put it back.
If you were to scoot it, it'd be like,
right.
It's like so loud and heavy. Like,
on the tile, yes.
Yeah, because it was on tile with a bunch of stuff on it. Nothing fell. Nothing shook.
Everything was perfect.
It was like it disappeared and reappeared. But there was no seeing it disappear.
Yes.
And I don't know how to explain that. That's just what it was.
It just was a ripple in the fabric of reality. Like,
like we jumped or something.
Yes, I know, with the OA. Like, something happened. But I will say, because this is kind of like an origin story talk, it's interesting because I was going to start around 2020 at Current 1.0, but there wouldn't have been Current 1.0 without this moment.
Yeah. That's
and I actually think it's important that this episode was mostly about this, because I reflect back. Sometimes whenever I am kind of lost in the dream of life, and I'm sucked into all of its drama, and I'm lost in my despair and my depression and my own sort of neurotic tendencies of, whatever it means to be an Enneagram 4 with a 3 wing. That's what helps me seem a little sunny.
Yes.
But the inside is
where we meet each other.
Yes, but I have a witness here that I'm not always this chipper. But like there is, I kind of lost where I was going with all of that, but there is a turning point that happened in that moment towards in the trajectory of everything, I think I lost it a little bit there. Help me bring it back. I got distracted on that.
I know, that's okay.
But the point is that was a specific moment in time that I feel like we can both look. Oh, whenever I get lost, that's what it was. Whenever I get lost in the illusion, that reminds me that everything that I'm seeing and experiencing, that helps me. It's kind of weird to say ground, because it actually is kind of ungrounding from whatever I perceive this to be, whatever I perceive this life to be. And it helps me open up again that, it isn't what it's perceived to be, and that's a very important distinct moment in time.
Yes.
And that's where we'll conclude with this in a little bit, but the mystic is all about the experiential connection with God. And even in scripture, when Saul to Paul, whatever, there's arguments that it's just because Saul is the Hebrew rendering of his name. The Greek version of that would be Paul, that he didn't really go through a name change. That's just different linguistic. It's showing who he was in terms of a Jewish man, and then him going to reaching Gentiles.
That's interesting.
So that's a little sidebar there. But if you do want to use it symbolically and in terms of a name change, it was because of a mystical experience that happened. This man was learned in the scriptures, in the Torah. He knew the tradition. He had standing within the hierarchical system, but it was an experience with the transcendence of divinity that changed the trajectory of his life. And the mystic lens is about seeing life, yes, using tradition as frameworks. Like I interpret my spirituality through the Christ narrative and story and symbolism.
Yeah.
But I don't need the doctrine and dogma of Christianity to qualify, justify, to tell me my spirituality. Right. It's about that divine union with God that brings that inner sense of wholeness and sense of healing from the perceived separation, so that I can live in a more embodied way. And so kind of a little rant and tangent there, but I think this moment was the moment that made it tangible and real in an experiential way that turned the chapter.
It did, because I remember days and days and days of, honestly, these experiences after that. It was like ripple effects. Like it definitely opened me up and changed things that it changed my rhythm. Even I started to implement practices. I wanted to engage with it more and experience more of it. I think we all do.
Yeah.
When you experience something like that's outside of the narrative of your life, you realize it's bigger. And
you have those as anchor points, because you're going to come down again.
You come down again.
You get lost in it all. Like, we had some really big struggles a few years ago.
Yeah.
And the only thing that grounded me out through those times of struggle was sitting in meditation and reminding myself that I am not the authority, the circumstance, the situation doesn't have the authority to name me and what God is doing in my life.
And usually when you're in the thick of it like that, you want something to remind you and break up this season. You're looking for signs, and or at least hoping that they're there, if you're not already like giving up on it all.
Right. Totally. So
but it doesn't
from this moment, what I'd like to do is speak a little bit to, because I don't even know where we're at time-wise or whatever, but as I told you earlier, like we're going to tell the story and it takes as long as it takes and people can tune in and not or whatever. It's up to them. But I wanted to record this first episode. Well, it's not the first, but it will be the first episode because from then I want people to have some background and origin to where we got to current today. That then opened us up to me being back open spiritually in a big way. And then a friend was having breakfast with me consistently and calling out. He's like, I know you're working in insurance right now. And he just told me straight up. He's like, God has a call on your life to be in ministry. Mm-hmm. Like you're a pastor, and that's just affirmed for the first time in so long. And it's funny because we come from the same background in the Vineyard and in the charismatic church, but he had, he's in a very progressive denomination now. But it was helpful to have someone kind of, can you just push that sliding door really quick? It was helpful to have someone see those giftings. Thank you. Mm-hmm. See those giftings and call them out of you. Yeah. And then create a space for me. Yeah. And created a job, part-time job for me that I left my commission, good paying insurance job for, decent paying, not the best, but still. Yeah. And so we did that for a little bit, but you never really felt at home in that church.
No, I had weird experiences there too.
Yeah, it was an old church from 1926.
Yeah,
maybe
but
that was part of it.
I love old buildings and stuff, but I still just had, I don't know, these moments of like, this is not it, and I really kick against things when I feel that. Right. As you know, I struggle big time. But that didn't feel it for us. And then fast forward to COVID 2020 that year.
I was working at that church.
Yeah, you were there.
We had some, and we're really seeing through the illusion that progressive Christianity is like the answer to my conservatism. Yeah. We had both had a lot of issues with some of the fundamentalism. Yeah. And the infiltration of politics into spirituality and faith in the church world from both sides. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to tangent on this too much, but to me, I just was very over feeling that I needed to place identity in a political side to be a spiritual leader. Right, because we were even there and involved, and it was getting very political, but then we would go visit a real conservative church that was local in this area that's really popular, and it was very political on that end, and it's like, oh my gosh, these both feel just not good. This is not it. Neither of these are it. Like the church I was on staff at, they're calling out. We were going to opposite leaders. Places and just feeling it all out. Well, we needed a little bit of worship service back in our life or something. We're just like, God, I need some sort of. Yeah. I'm tired of just thinking all the time, thinking about thoughts. And as Alan Watts says, eventually you realize the only thing you have to think about is your thoughts, and you're like, you go mad. Yeah. If that's all you have to think about, your thoughts, and so. We would go to that, sometimes drop in. We even went up to the Vineyard for a little bit up in Anaheim before that building got stolen. But that's a whole nother conversation. And, they were like telling people how to vote, but Republican on the other. Like, it's just just getting annoyed with all of the fundamentalism and the infiltration of politics. Yes. And so we decided to just start our own. Try again. Mm-hmm. Started meeting on the beach in 2020. For those that don't know the story, I left that church. We started meeting at the beach. I actually started meeting at the beach a little bit before I left the church, just to see if some people would show up. Yeah. And the people did, and this was kind of the issue, and this was the crack in the first version of Current, I believe. We started meeting, and a lot of people that knew that we had moved out here 4 years before that to plant the church were people that were from more of that Vineyard charismatic circle. Yes. And so when they caught wind that Luke and Lindsey are starting something, they kind of came out of the woodwork and resurfaced, not knowing how we've developed spiritually and opened up spiritually over the 4 years of time. They kind of, many people I think just assumed that we were still kind of Vineyard charismatic people. And I think to their surprise, it wasn't that. But there were people that were open. And we had a lady come, friend of ours come, and she became a friend, and she did worship, you know, acoustic worship. And people were open-minded enough that I would bring a singing bowl. We would do silence, 5 minutes of silent meditation with a singing bowl. And I would bring a statue of a meditating Jesus sitting in lotus posture. And just to start to
test it.
have people reframe Jesus in their head.
Yeah.
Not this suffering, you know, person hanging on a cross with blood dripping everywhere, but a contemplative one with the Father, fully realized divine incarnation, you know, that walks in authority and power in the physical dimension, like that sort of image coming up for people. And so we were doing that, and people were open-minded enough to go there, but it could only go so far.
Yeah.
And I was still learning who I was as a sort of, you know, leader, facilitator.
You were growing into that authority, I think, to speak over people and to guide people.
Yeah, because I think the only way I knew how to lead and guide was from my previous life, working at my dad's church and then working at other churches. Like it was a very clear boundary line that I had to stay within, and I could just mirror what my dad did. And it took time for me to come into my own person, you know, still like, it's really only been since doing this version of Current that I feel like I've really come into my own. And to use an Old Testament analogy, like you realize Saul's armor is just too heavy and you have to go with what you got, which is your own slingshot. Like that's to slay whatever metaphorical giants. Like you have to go with what is comfortable to you. And you don't need all this protection of your ego and all this other stuff. You just need the truth of yourself and the comfort of who you are to do that. And I didn't have that developed in the first version yet. And so it got hijacked in a big way by people who did have some experience and authority and thought they knew where I wanted to go. And so it was kind of like, because my inability to really step into driving the thing, it was basically like, well, scoot over, I'll drive. Yeah. And an older, you know, more, quote, experienced person began to drive the ship. And ultimately the thing fizzled out because of it. And really my inability to step into that leadership space. But I learned so much through that process.
Oh my gosh, there was so much yes, relationally we've met a lot of awesome people that are still in our life. And the amount of experience though, like it was necessary. It was a necessary part of our life. It totally needed to happen. You know, I think looking back,
it absolutely did.
I remember some really interesting times and times we've met with people coming with lots of heaviness and things, and we didn't know what we were doing. We were just figuring it out, you know. Like there's so many times that I felt like I experienced growth in that, even though towards the end of it, I think I was pretty emotionally drained and I was very emotional about the whole thing. I was done.
Same.
It wasn't fully aligned to where we were headed. But
No.
It
ran its course, and it was good. And even it helped me revisit even praying for people, which I would love to still incorporate. Like we had some powerful times praying with people. And, you know, even if you're just approaching this from a spiritual perspective, like the energetic release that comes when you are going to those spiritual and emotional and psychological places with people, like that's true liberation, going to those places. And we got to see that firsthand. And after that first year, I will say too, just in full transparency, like what gave me another, this is going to be kind of taboo, and I know you may not want me sharing this, but if I'm just being honest, it's part of the story. I went to Santa Cruz and had a psychedelic experience that I felt like the Holy Spirit met me in. And for some of you, that might be interesting. Wait a second, psychedelic experience, Holy Spirit, what? But I did, and I had an experience that I felt like I was invited, and I had the safety and I had the protection and provision of God to release from whatever known I thought I had at that church, and to quit there and to start this version of Current. And that gave me the courage to do it in the first place. And I have to, give credit where credit's due, that like
Yeah.
seeing from that non-linear or non-rational place gave me the courage and the sensation of the carrying of God to do what I believe God had us to do. So we, that's whenever the summer of 2020 then, and that's when we started Current. I left that job. It ran its course throughout that year. We, after a year, honestly too, because of like our inability, like we really didn't want things structured at all. Like it was very loose.
Yeah.
It's very, very loose.
Very loose. I mean, it was.
That was why I learned at that point too, that structure serves a purpose, that, the river can only flow because there's banks and banks of the river. And so I feel like, I learned the value of structure, to not just be so flowy, but to give if the wind's going to blow through and make a note, it needs a flute that has a very structured, crafted way of manufacturing to be able for the song to be played. And it's like, okay, I need to create structure, a better, solid structure, so that the flow can come through this space.
Yeah.
And so, that was it. 2021, we ended that. Briefly started to walk down a road potentially of being with a Pentecostal church. For a couple months. They want us to be a satellite campus and Assemblies of God church. They brought us up
out of nowhere.
Brought us up on stage and prayed for us.
Well, I remember though, the only reason I felt like I was like, okay, let's try it. I was thinking, well, if we could teach the message that we believe is really helpful for people, which is freeing people, but, do it in such a way that's maybe artfully, done, so it's not kind of cryptic. I know that sounds kind of bad, but that was kind of
totally
like,
right.
Maybe then we can just get a building and we can at least just get this thing going.
And I could actually stop figuring out each month how we're going to crack the nut here, a salary. Oh my gosh, that sounds incredible.
I know, a little enticing. But
we were living on straight faith for a long time. And I think people should know that.
Yeah.
Like, we were living on straight faith where seriously, we didn't know month to month how things were coming together. Some people call that irresponsible, whatever, but
provision was always there in the most crazy way. I mean, we could talk about all the times that's how things came through, and sometimes
at the last
we found a way to figure it out.
And sometimes it was a lot of grit and hard work.
Oh, gosh.
And, I'm not as too proud to say that there was a year where I seriously, I was like, we are not that far away from rent having to be paid, and we don't have any of that funding. And dude, I got the car registered for Uber, and I lived in that car for 10 days, driving people all over San Diego, even up to Orange County. And so it's not just all you sit here on the couch and God takes care of it. It's participation, and sometimes frustrating,
and
hard
years
work.
Of difficulty. It was not bliss all the time.
No, it was not. But you
moments.
Look back and it's there's faithfulness from God's end and my end.
Yeah.
We both, divinity and humanity have to be faithful in order to work in tandem for realness and wholeness to be able to be realized. This isn't just magic necessarily.
Right.
The magic happens when we participate and choose to take courage and faithful steps in the right direction. That's whenever magic, whatever you consider that to be, actually takes place, And so, the satellite campus at a very well-off Assemblies of God church was enticing. After they brought us up on stage and prayed for us, we were like,
I felt
it was
like
funny.
Such a fraud.
Such a fake. Such a phony. Oh my God. No integrity at all.
Just to be transparent, I don't think any less of them or anything, but I didn't feel it reciprocated.
No.
It all felt like a show.
It was a show.
None of it. We were kind of propped up because I think maybe they thought we looked cool and represented them well.
That's
and
exactly
then I think
it.
we thought we could get something from them. And it was just not spiritual at all. It was very much, what can we get from each other? Which was clearly
transactional bullshit.
Yes, it was transactional. And we all needed to get out of there.
Yes.
We all needed to separate.
Yeah, he would make jokes about me looking like Jesus. I'm like, that's the only reason you like me,
and
dude.
that you rode a Harley.
Yeah, because he rode a Harley too, and that's how it started. So it's riding Harleys and looks like Jesus, okay? Although I don't look like Jesus, by the way. I mean, all right, I won't get sidetracked. But the point is that we walked on that for a bit. We both realized that we, weren't right. And then my friend asked me to be the face of Christian cannabis like a couple months later, who sat with me in Santa Cruz.
So there was connection there from a few years prior. We kind of trusted him from that experience that you had going to Santa Cruz.
And then we learned.
But I felt deep down not sure too, but yeah.
Yeah, and we won't name him or all of that. I feel concerned for him. We both feel concerned for him at this point now. There's not many people that I feel like have really gone nuts. And I think he's, in Jerry Garcia's lyrics, I think he's had too much too fast. Yeah. And it's lost touch completely.
We've had some fun experiences through that. I was grateful. I mean, there's things to be grateful for.
Oh, grateful.
Things
times
that
we had a vibrating bed with a psychedelic light so you could have a trip without tripping. We
you
took
met
that.
some great people, like
still
that you're
friends
still
with
connected
people
with. Like there was things about it. It wasn't transactional in the sense of like financially transactional, but it was like we thought it would be.
We had a cool camper van for a while. I got to do some neat events in Venice Beach.
Yeah.
One of the times was cool. The other time was not cool. But it was all. I learned a ton.
Yeah.
Without directly learning.
Yeah.
Like in that way,
right.
And so I learned a lot from it.
Yeah.
More implicitly.
And it was testing. It was a testing time for me too. Our kids are getting a little older, and I'm like, man, like we need some. I was thinking stability, foundation, and I was thinking about needing to go back to work. There's lots of things happening in my family, and there was just so much that year that was. Yeah. It was not just cut and dry. It was a lot that year.
And then we'll bring it up to, because something tells me that we've been chatting for a while. Yes. So let's bring it up to. Then that leads us to a kind of a little over, whenever I unplugged from all of that, I did start writing shortly after the Sunday letter email, just as like a way to externally process the spiritual path and things and beginning to taste, what it could be like to do some spiritual direction with people just on a one-on-one basis. But I didn't have any intention. Like I really was like, what we're going to do is not a traditional church model. Like I was really thinking possibly just like writing emails and then doing some spiritual direction with people. And that's like our ministry and, doing other things. And so for all of 2023, that was at the end of 2022, whenever I unplugged from all of that and felt disillusioned in a big way. And then all of 2023, I just wrote a weekly email and struggled in daily life. I was going to Tijuana once a week.
Yeah, that's
Went
right.
to Tijuana once a week to do some and I didn't post about it online all the time. A friend of mine, he had connection. We'd go pick up food that was just going to be thrown away, and we'd go down to TJ, and we had these places that we would go distribute food, and just very real, tangible, looking in the eyes of poverty and helping people.
You were also doing the homeless outreach, I think, at that time. I think you were just trying to be as involved, with what felt like ministry that was available to you, that you could minister to people. And I think that showed up. The homeless outreach showed up, and then, your expression of being able to teach and share with people was the Sunday message. Yeah,
just I would send the email, and then I would be at Humanity Showers, and then I'd go down to TJ, and just trying to be very practical and just like, okay, who are the people that are seemingly the most, the least last and lost, as we used to say in my vineyard circle. And it's like, okay, well, who are those people? And I'll just get around them and just, be present with who we perceive to be, in most need. Yeah. And so that framework has kind of shifted too, because I'm not doing either of those things now, but that's a whole nother tangent. And I want to get to where you then later in 2023 in October started work full time. That was our own personal that was a struggle. That was
difficult.
Very difficult and transition moment. I had been even trying to get other jobs and stuff too. And I for the life of me, I couldn't land anything. Nothing. Like,
Yeah.
you know, even interviews, and then ghosted, and it just was so aggravating.
Yeah. But I
Feeling
think it
qualified and capable and even licensed
Yeah.
for certain jobs, and nothing was coming through for me, man. Nothing.
And I think that's is because there was something for me that needed to be worked out and worked through. Because I've been praying for specific things in my life, and I think that it was necessary for me to take that step.
Yeah.
You know, but it
And
was
that was hard.
It was really, really hard, and it's been hard, but it's been beautiful. It's had its beautiful moments too, and breakthroughs actually for myself that would have only happened through this. So
Yeah.
it was necessary for me. But it was
that
a
was
hard
the
time.
that was the setting for when then you had only been working for a few months. Kids were on winter break, and I was in meditation, and I felt the Holy Spirit tell me, because years and years and years ago, whenever we first moved here, and this will be a great dovetail to conclude as we wrap up here. Years and years and years ago, whenever we first moved here, we'd been here for about 6 months. I had a friend move out to do worship. We were doing some Sunday night services. Some people were actually showing up, and people we were connecting with. And I woke up one Monday morning, and I felt the Holy Spirit tell me, it's not the right time. You're not the person yet. Like, I've not crafted the person in you to be. And I remember that moment distinctly, and that's whenever our friend moved back to Indiana. And I just, let go of the early version of the church plant that happened back in 2016. But then it was in meditation where I was brought back to that moment in my imagination, and I felt the Spirit tell me, it's the time, and you are the right person. Like, it's the initiation has been, it's time for the next level of the initiation. This whole, 7-8 years at that point, living here has just been you excavating the truth of who you are and what I'm doing in your life. Now it's time. And I'm like, God, seriously? Like, I just, and the first thing I thought of is Lindsey's totally not going to be down for this. She's going to think I'm delusional because, like, it was just.
Well, I went from being stay at home for 7.5 years to a full-time job. So my time's wrapped up, a lot of mentally as well. Even outside of those hours, I'm still wrapping my head around the fact that I got to be up at, 5 a.m, Monday through Friday. And you know what I mean? And I don't see my kids in the morning like I did. And, just things, there's a lot I was going through and processing. And it was just a huge change. And I'm like, are you serious?
And I remember just telling you. And so we got up, and Lindsey was in the office that day. And I took the kids. We walked right over to where we meet right now. And I just felt like God said, just see if it's available. Do once a month. And I was thinking September. And this was like at the beginning of January. And I just felt like, no, this month. And I'm like, damn, okay. So I booked January 28th, the end of February, and then the last Sunday in March was Easter. And I made a deal essentially with God of like, I'm going to do this like true self. No bullshit, no facade. The very first gathering I even mentioned about, my experience in Santa Cruz with psychedelics. Like, I just wanted this to not be what we are expected to talk about when we come into a church space. Like,
we had that talk beforehand too.
We had it's got to be real.
If it's not us, it's not going to work.
It's not going to work.
If we can't be who we are, because that's how I've always experienced the church. Is I've never felt freedom to be me. And yeah, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't commit to something where I couldn't feel comfortable going into, and just really being like, if I'm this today, I don't care.
Right. If I have low energy, it's fine.
Yeah.
If I whatever, like,
if I'm up and happy, it's fine. But I don't need to live that. I don't have to be that character. I just hate the character I was associated with, that I had to associate with when I stepped in the church. So I just knew, like, if we did this again, it's got to be totally different.
Yes.
And like,
I wanted to represent Christ in a completely new way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if I have to act like all of the other Christians around, I don't want it.
No.
I want to, and I use this language a lot, I have no interest in the religion of Christianity. No. I only have interest in embodying the way of Christ. Mm-hmm. And that's my mission, that's my focus, that's everything that I do, is to help reimagine the truth of Christ embodied in the person of Jesus of Nazareth as the example and the mirror for how that actually then shows up in my life, living in union with the Father, empowered by the same Spirit. Jesus said the same Spirit that empowered him empowers us. So like I have to slip into the shoes of what it means to actually be the embodiment of the divine incarnation of Jesus through this person that is Luke. Yeah. And if I can't be fully Luke, then I don't want to do it. I can't do it. It won't work. I've already tried that. I had a track record of trying that it didn't work. So I made a kind of deal of like, I'm going to be radically myself and trust that God is created
That'll
me
work.
and all of that. And I said, I'll give it till Easter. And if we show up at Easter, we know what it's like to put energy and effort into things and have no one show up. Years. We did things. No one gave a shit. Nobody showed up. And we did. And that was what was important. And I'm not bitter or jaded about those moments now. I'm like, that was all grist for the mill.
I think thank God, because man, think if it works.
Exactly.
I would be stuck having to play a character I don't want to be.
I've had that thought so many times.
For money or something.
If any of those other things would have worked, I would, like, God was looking out for us the whole time and no interest being there. You know, and again, not that it's the external validation. At this point in time, starting it again was like, I don't need external validation. It's out of the fullness of who I am that's just expressing and facilitating a space out of what's happened real in my life. That's the mystic lens I'm talking about from my own experiential reality of knowing, this deep inner knowing. That expression creates this space. Not this space needs to form my inner world. This inner world overflows. That's the mystic expression. That's the mystical reality, is experience with God that facilitates the way life is. And so I was like, if nobody shows up, you know, if it dwindles down, everybody shows up to the first one. People come out of the woodwork. And I'm like, if it dwindles by Easter, I'm literally going to hang it up and do something else with my life. Like the calling's done.
Yes.
And I'm going to be like nail in the coffin.
Done. We're never going to revisit this again.
And to our surprise, it grew. And by Easter, I mean, I was elated, like, just to see that, like, being who you really are, whatever sort of silver bullet or secret sauce people are looking for in their life, you're it. Like, beneath all of the, you know, I recently just watched The Wizard of Oz for the first time with Sophia, you know, and it's like when you realize the person behind all the curtain and all of that's just a normal dude. The
wizard?
Yes, the wizard is not some, you know, it's not what it was perceived to be. Like when you realize who you are beneath your own curtain and how you project to be or whatever, like who you really are, like that's the secret sauce. And it's like, God showed me, like, yeah, that's the way that I've been wanting for you, and now it's time. And so this whole past over year of meeting, almost a year and a half, we've been gathering. Now we meet twice a month. It's been just like a really awesome witness, not just for myself, but I think in so many people, like the language that people use for the space of being fresh and finding friendship and community, and people are roommates now because of it, and like have had even like, you know, collaboration opportunities, like all sorts of stuff, just because of a bit of bold courage to step back into the calling. And the way that you have, like, I guess we should wrap up with, like, you were apprehensive at first. What changed? And when was that change? For this where we're at today, when and what happened within you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was apprehensive up until you did it, but until you did the first gathering for this version, because we've done it for so long, and I almost oddly think it was good that I was working, even though I'm like, oh my God, one more thing to pile on my schedule, you know? But like, I love people. I do love to think about helping people and helping each other and being in community as well. And I think that was actually, now that I'm saying this, I think I remember us talking, like, you know, I was working every day and I was like, you know, it's so surfacey here. And I had been home, so like I hadn't dealt with that 7.5 years. really like on a daily of like, you know, it feels like it's just very surface conversations. And that's not to say that these people aren't great people. It's just that that's office life. It's so, it can be so surfacey and so vague and not deep at all. And I just didn't realize it until I experienced it. And I remember I was talking to you while I was outside of the office but I was there, and I was like, I want people that I can talk to that go deeper in my life, that like we come together for this. Like, I think I was starting to kind of be already being bought into the idea of let's do it, you know, even though I was like struggling at the same time. But I believed in you, and that you really, like, your experience with the other versions, that you knew what it was going to take, even though like you didn't maybe know till you did it fully. I think I definitely, I know I believed in you and what you had. So I know that once, you know, we did it, I was like, okay, this is definitely more us. It was fun. Yeah. You know, but it's been a struggle still, just with like, I just struggle with commitment sometimes. I like things to be open. I don't like being bound to anything, but
yeah.
I love it. And I think it was really after just doing the first one that I was like, yeah, this is different than anything we've done. Yeah. This is aligned to us, you know?
Yeah. And it's just been like a gradient of you, I think, coming more and more into like, not just like accepting it, but like really like choosing it and being like, yeah, there is something that's unfolding here, you know?
Yeah.
And so, so that's what changed for you. What do you feel like, as we close, what do you feel like has been the most transformative thing for you in terms of your spiritual practice, your relationship with God? Like, because I mean, this is called the mystic lens. Like, it's about your direct experience with divinity. So as you reflect back, and it could even be recent, but as we close, what do you feel like has been some of the most transformative thing for you?
I think, you know, it's interesting because when I was home and I was in my practices, I had such a rhythm for everything. And I would wake up and I would spend time in meditation. I would read. I had my whole, like, my practices, and I was very disciplined in that. I journaled every day. Like, that was my rhythm. And I had interesting experiences and things, and I did that for years, you know? And oddly, you know, now I don't, I mean, it sounds weird to say this, but like, I've not made a whole lot of time since I started working. I mean, like I said, I get up at 5 every day. So like, I don't have a whole lot of, like, I don't get up any earlier than that because I like to have my evenings with you still and stuff. And I'd have to just go to bed earlier because I like my sleep, but I don't really make a whole lot of time for that. But like, oddly, I oddly feel almost sometimes like more in tune now. And I don't know if it's just because like I'm really doing real life. I'm really facing a lot of different things and challenges, and relationally and within myself, and learning to navigate things I've never really had to face and navigate. I almost feel more in tune with God and directed and shown things now. And I don't know if it was just the years of discipline and gaining knowledge, but not being able to apply much of it. I feel very carried and connected, and I don't spend a lot of time in those. I try to when I think about it, but like, I mean, I'm always really kind of in my own way of prayer with God. I do that. That is probably my biggest practice, has been just staying in a prayerful connection with God, like always kind of talking to him in my own way and sorting through things. But if I talk about like practices, I'm not journaling, I'm not spending time in meditation every day, but I do feel connected all the time. And I do feel very carried, and I feel like I'm learning so much. I don't know. It's weird because you would think the practices would be the thing, but I think it set me up for this season.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that is so good, because all of the practices and all of the awareness and all of the knowing and all of the stuff is supposed to be put into applicable situations and ways. Like you're supposed to be equipped to live life and to show others the way. And I think we actually get trapped in our practices. And I just love that as an encouragement to people listening, because a lot of people listening and watching live very busy lives too.
Yeah.
And me and you have talked about this. Like I say, like, what does it mean to live a modern monastic life? It's not separation from all the world or all of that. It's actually embodying all of this stuff. And you are in a season where you're living it. And it's in real time where you get to see grace happen in your life.
Yeah.
And that, and you have that connection. And I'm just, I love that.
Yeah.
You look like you're about to cry.
It does make me emotional.
Yeah.
You know.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about living it out and yeah. That's what I like so much about the Jesus story is, you know, it's very few verses that you see where he's just like praying or by himself or whatever. It's mostly him with, you know, the lowest rungs of society that were considered unholy and unclean, and the people that were considered to not get it.
Yeah.
And he keeps showing that the people that we expect don't get it are the people that get it the most. The tax collectors, the prostitutes, the lepers, and I just think it's so good what you were just saying, because you're like, yeah, I had some seasons of practice and now I'm doing it. And I think there's an opportunity for all of it, you know. But I like the thing that came up when you were talking to me, other than like, I love you and thank you so much for being honest about everything and sharing and vulnerable. But like, I once heard that Eckhart Tolle doesn't have a formal meditation practice anymore.
Really?
Like for years, like he doesn't have like a sitting zazen practice. Like he just, like all of it is, the point is not how long can you sit. Now we do have classes and things to help people learn how, you know, introduction to contemplative practice was something that we just started, and it's been really great. Because people are so unfamiliar with silence and unfamiliar with not being stimulated all the time or giving into their thoughts. But, you know, Eckhart Tolle talking about, you know, the purpose isn't that you can sit in lotus posture for 6 hours or whatever, you know, not that I could ever do that, but, you know, an hour. That's good. But like, you start to graduate from that. Spiritual maturity is what Paul talked about. It's like, how do you actually how do you learn how to integrate stillness in these practices and knowing into actually engaging the world? Because if we're truly here for healing and wholeness, you have to get out there and be in it. And you have had a season of that right now.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share before we wrap up this conversation?
I don't think so.
It's interesting, even right there. I'm like, I feel like I need to dovetail this with something else, but I kind of just want to have, like, you're sharing and it's like moving, and I'm like, I know I should probably, like, you know, be the host or some shit, but I don't want to just talk to you and go some of those spaces, but
no, it's good.
It's a good place to end.
Yeah.
So for those listening, thank you for tuning in. And this is the very first episode of the season. And if you've listened to this far, you should win a prize or something. I don't know. Send us a direct message. If you listened this far, send us a direct message. I don't know. We should have some sort of signal word that people can, as evidence that they've listened to it. No, I'm kidding. But really, like, it's been good to share. And as people listen to these other episodes, everybody's sharing their own story and sharing their own worldview and paradigm. And I think through all of this, it's just been, we need to have a space where we can all walk each other home, as Ram Dass once said. And that's to have a church have its tagline be, we're all just walking each other home. That's on the back of this t-shirt, by the way, low key plug. Like, that's what we're doing here. That's what church is ever supposed to be. It's people who are walking each other home to the inner temple and allowing that to shape their life. So thank you, sweetheart.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, let's go enjoy our Saturday, eh?
Sounds good.